Hello, Gaz Williams here for Sonic Lab, and in our second episode of our special little series on the Teenage Engineering Pocket Operators, we're going to look at the PO12, the Rhythm. Okay, so as we've mentioned, you might want to watch the first episode just to get an overview of these things. This episode is going to be specifically looking at this little rhythm box. So this is essentially a drum machine that is very bare bones, very minimalist, but actually has quite a lot of functionality. So as we've mentioned, they have similarities across the whole range, but this one does have some unique functions, namely that this is the only one that's specifically geared around being a drum machine. Now, we've got 16 different sounds, and we'll listen to those sounds in turn. If you notice, we've got blue tack here, which is really to stop it sliding around, because they do slide around a lot, so you might want to do that to secure it to your desk. Okay, we're going to quickly flick through all the sounds. Kick. Some kind of noise. Clap. Toms. Possible to get the disco toms. The fabled cowbell. Some noise. And then the final two, kind of interesting in that we've got like a synth and then a bass sound. So you could actually make pitches tuned, albeit it doesn't tell you what note, you'd have to do it all by ear. So that's looking at what the sounds are. Now, as I mentioned, each one of those sounds can be automated. Now, if we selected a pattern, I'm going to choose pattern 13, and I'm going to, first of all, hold down function and hit the pattern button. That's wiped the pattern. So now we've got a blank pattern running. With the right button enabled, hold down sound and select, say, the kick. I can now punch in where I want the kicks. So we've got quite a Gabber-esque kick there. I should mention that these two buttons, if I hold down the two parameter knobs, if I hold down BPM, the outer knob chooses tempo, which has a range of 60 through to 240, and then the inner parameter changes the amount of swing. Now we can see these kind of cotton spools. This is like a kind of keeping up with this sewing machine graphic, will give us a little visual indicator of just how much sort of swing or roughly where in the range of tempo it's available. Also, just pressing the BPM button down, you've got three preset tempos: hip hop at 80, disco at 120, and techno at 140. Okay, so what I'll do now is I'll just build a little pattern up, and I'll show you how essentially it's a little bit like parameter locking, the way that you can apply small little adjustments to the sound. Okay. Let's get down to hip hop tempo. Let's bring the swing back a little bit. Okay, I'm going to select the kick, and now I'm going to hold the right button down. So you can see it's very easy, very quick to write those parameter changes in. And let's do the same thing with the hi-hat now. Select the hi-hat. So the effect button works in a similar way. When I hold the effect down and I touch one of the 16 sort of preset effects, it'll automatically write that effect into our pattern. So I'll use the high pass sweep filter effect to demonstrate this. hold down effect, it just clears the effect that I've written in there. But if you're deft and punch in these effects, they do call them punch in effects, and you can kind of see how that can work now. So if I play that, so you can put some real variety and action into your patterns as well, which I think is nifty. So the other function which is specific to the PO12, the rhythm, is the trigger multiplier, and that allows you to kind of put multiple triggers onto a step. Now, the best way to demonstrate that perhaps is if I select the hi-hat. Now, if I hold down trigger 1 out the 16, and then if I just step through the BPM button, I can apply triggers. Now, I've put 3 triggers on here now, so we get that, and we can, well, let's try some other ones. I'll just put various ones in now. Let's put some on the kick as well. And you can see what I did then. I actually accidentally changed the volume there. So it can be a bit fiddly, because if you hold the BPM button down first and hit one of the patterns, that's the way that you can adjust the volume. But in this case, what I need to do is I need to hold the trigger down and then BPM. So, you know, it's quite easy to make that mistake. And, you know, so you just have to watch out for a few things like that. I guess the more you use them, the more you'll learn to avoid that. But just to mention that then, so if I hold BPM down, hit button 1, then the pattern will be very almost, I think it's like mute actually, button 1. Button 2, we're starting to bring in the volume as we increase. We can actually see the LEDs increase as I add volume onto it. There's full volume on 16. But you might be wondering, can you set individual volume levels for each of the drums? Well, you can't. So that's a little bit of a limitation. But some of the effects, like for instance, there is like a kind of distortion effect, and you can use some of those effects which will, albeit globally, you can apply accents using that functionality. So as you can hear, the sound quality is actually really good, and that is in part down to the fact that they're using Cirrus Logic digital to analog converters, which are well respected in the industry. And I think this unit is a really cool little drum machine. I can't think of any drum machine at its price point that can compare with it, really. And I think that it would be a brilliant source of built-in sample loops up to use maybe in your DAW. Anyway, that wraps up this second episode. We're looking at the Teenage Engineering Pocket Operators, and I'm Gaz Williams. This is Sonic Lab. Bye for now.